take. So we've been reading William Ian Miller's book, The Anatomy of Disgust, and I just set my physical copy down somewhere I can't get my hands on right now. Ouch. But so as the title, as it's very obvious from the title, the whole book is all about disgust, the emotion of disgust. What is disgust? And it gets into the moral implications and the physical and just it's everything. But I have to say, just I don't know, reading it, just my general impression is it's sometimes almost strikes me along the realm of the writing style strikes me in the realm of somebody like Montaigne or Pascal almost in the way he writes about this stuff. Just I don't know, he just gets into all these really nice, interesting issues, and he's very suggestive. The writing's always very, very suggestive of other things. It's a very rich book. At least I found. I really, really enjoyed the book a lot.
It feels like it's not constrained.
Yeah.
By academia or kind of even a need to focus on one thing intensely. He kind of makes suggestive statements, and he kind of feels around for all different kinds of disgust. It feels a little bit like more of an open look into disgust than your typical kind of academic research.
And on a meta level, I really like that. It doesn't go for this really, really clean, pure effect, right? It's very reflective of how things get messed up in real life. How like you don't really do you experience a pure emotion always? There's a mixture of all these forces, cultural forces, other emotions coming together on top of other ones, right? I like that very much. It felt very, at times it felt very, very real to me. I could relate to large chunks of the book. That being said, let's get into what he's talking about a little bit.
Yeah, or I guess what we're doing here. Why are we talking about disgust?
Yeah.
Basically, to summarize for our viewers tonight, disgust will be discussed.
Disgust will be discussed.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
And if you're
somebody had to say it. Somebody had to say it.
Somebody did have to say it, even though Miller did say it in the book. But somebody did have to say it.
So I think our viewers have gotten their first sense of disgust, and they can move on into the book. I don't know.
Where do you want to start? Like, should we just start with like his general view of what disgust is?
Yeah.
You want to start there? I mean, at least I have some things to say there. Just maybe this will get us started a little bit.
I don't know. Do you want to before we do that? You know, why are we talking about disgust?
Oh, okay, sure.
Why do you think we're talking about so what?
Ah, wow. Okay. Well, this will lead back straight into this anyway. So, well, I mean, first, I think the reason we brought it is because our last video was our video 2 videos ago ended on like us discussed a little bit. You brought it up a little bit, and we just a little bit. I thought it would be an interesting lead off from our last discussion, which is about punishment. Remember we were talking about punishment and determinism. And the need to punish, just this is overwhelming need to punish people, or the need to punish, like the things like Nietzsche talks about, this need to punish, and you talked about how that was perhaps disgusting.
Yeah, well, I mean, I kind of suggested that, you know, why is it that we can't, if we can whittle away at emotions like disgust or try to contain them with reason, why can't we try to contain our desire to punish? I guess that would be our sense of fairness.
Yeah.
Why can't we whittle away at that too?
Yeah. Good question. I think it's a little bit more difficult to whittle away at that one, but
I don't think we have to answer that. But I mean, like, I don't know. I think this is coming out of the tradition of study of the emotions, starting with Nietzsche, and how essential the emotions are to your life and how you form judgments and how you maybe even what you feel is just or essential to the self or who you are. Your entire self is wrapped up in kind of these very deep core emotions. I mean, and emotional intuitions theory, right? It's really popular these days. And those the five big ones they have found out that the five moral centers that exist worldwide among all cultures apparently are at this point in-group, out-group preference, authority, purity, fairness, and harm. So I guess we're going to be discussing one of the five big emotional cores that exists worldwide, which is purity. There's probably not a culture on Earth that hasn't been affected by this in some way. Disgust, purity. It's one of our moral backbones, even though you might not think so. In my eyes, it's one of the most powerful and dangerous emotions that we have. Emphasis on dangerous.
Yeah. But it's interesting, though. I mean, the relation between disgust and purity is not as straightforward as non-disgusting things are pure, and non-pure things are disgusting. But disgust does give shape to purity. Does give shape to the disgusting. That's for sure. And like as Miller says in the book, disgusting carves out a space for the pure. That's for sure. But it's not they're not polar opposites either. But this will very much play into the moral ethic of purity too, I guess, and on the reverse side of things.
Yeah. So I just we have to kind of get that in there to know what are we talking about here. I mean, it's going to be one of the fundamental cores of morality that people have, and even if they don't think they have it, they do. It's an emotion they feel all the time, especially I think on the internet.
Oh yeah.
So, and I guess we'll discuss why I think that is a little bit later. But if you want to discuss what disgust is, so go ahead, be my guest.
All right. Well, just a little bit. I don't know. Okay, so reading Miller, of course, after this book has been written, like there's been a lot of work in social psychology on disgust. People, you mean like I don't know. One I personally love, like Dave Pizarro, does a lot, like these guys looking into this stuff. Martha Nussbaum, the big philosopher that Thunderfoot didn't like because she quoted Dworkin. Martha Nussbaum. There's an example of disgust. He just threw it out because she had a Dworkin quote in there. But anyway,
she's been poisoned by Dworkin.
She's been poisoned. Yes, right. There you go. There's some
contaminated by Dworkin.
Some kind of magical contamination.
Magical
it runs
thinking.
along. Touch that pencil to the toilet, and then touch it to another pencil. But anyway, she wrote a book a little bit after Miller wrote his, and to some extent, some of it's a reply to him, a little bit, because she liked his book very much. This is the book Martha Nussbaum wrote. It's called Hiding from Humanity, Disgust, Shame, and the Law. And Martha Nussbaum is really her focus is mainly the law. Right? She's interested in how much a role disgust should play in lawmaking and things like this. But she's very much interested in the philosophy of the emotions, and she's a player there, definitely. So she brings up Paul Rosen, who did the breakthrough work on disgust, and Miller and all these guys. But just to get started here, I don't like how Miller's views are represented by people who write about. I just don't think maybe they didn't. And Martha Nussbaum is a great philosopher. She's a real careful reader. I like Martha Nussbaum, but like her and some other people, I always want to get started by saying I don't like how they read Miller. I think they misread Miller, and they misrepresent his views post this book. So let's start with Martha Nussbaum, and then I want to get into another book that just came out recently by a woman who's a scientist researching disgust. And she released a book, I think, last year or this year. But let's start with Martha Nussbaum. Listen to this quote I got from this book. So Engel, Rosen, and Miller, she kind of lumps all these guys together when she discusses disgust. all conclude that disgust pertains to our problematic relationship with our own animality. Its core idea is the belief that if we take in the animalness of animal secretions, we will ourselves be reduced to the state of animals. Similarly, if we absorb or are mingled with the decaying, we ourselves will be mortal and decaying. The products that are disgusting are those that we connect with our vulnerability to decay and to becoming waste products ourselves. All right. So, okay. So Rosen, this is Rosen's idea mainly.
Yeah.
Rosen was the guy in psychology who came up with this idea that disgust is reminding us of our animal nature. Right? And before we started this, each of us took a disgust sensitivity quiz, right, to rate our own disgust, our level of disgust. And this was created by Rosen and Jonathan Haidt. And part of that disgust test or sensitivity test was animal reminders. That's these guys, their theory. But Miller is not here. Don't you think this is a total misrepresentation
I find that
Miller
to be almost completely wrong.
Yeah, right. I don't get where she comes off only tangentially. Could you even begin to lump Miller in with these people? Miller denies disgust is all about our animality. He actually rejects his view straight out in the book when he says
we don't find all animals disgusting.
disgusting.
In fact, we have to live up to animals sometimes.
Yes, some animals we find we think are great.
Eye of the tiger, man.
Right, exactly right. Somebody like a writer like Nietzsche uses animals all the time, but he uses lower and higher animals too. Right? I mean, we are not disgusted by animals. I guess maybe she's trying to sneak in with the word animality, but I think this is misconstruing his view. All right, first, and because Miller is more concerned with lower things that are ranked low, things that are low and contaminating. That's where he places disgust, not animality. And he actually says this argument's wrong because the animals we find disgusting are animals we find low. Animals that we rank high are animals that do not disgust. All right, so first, Martha Nussbaum, I'm sorry. I think you're wrong. And then, so let's put Martha Nussbaum aside for a second, even though she does have interesting stuff to say about disgust. Also, there's a book recently written by a woman named Valerie Curtis. She's a scientist, and she's one of these group of people who are doing work into the theory that using evolutionary psychology to explain disgust. And her group, but again, maybe she's one of the big people of this group. Their theory is that disgust is related to parasites. So we evolved disgust as a defense against parasites, which I think I don't know if I don't really have a big problem with that per se. I don't have a big problem with that per se. There might be something to that, or maybe disgust might have evolved because of parasites. I don't know if we evolved disgust to detect. Well, we'll see. Or sorry, maybe I should change my wording. Disgust is about parasites, but maybe the existence of parasites did cause the evolution of disgust. I mean, that's a really interesting theory. Great, wonderful, go for it.
Yeah, does kind of limit the scope of disgust we're talking about.
Exactly right. I mean, it's raw disgust. You know what I mean? Like worms. Ew.
Yeah.
Right. That's the level. But okay, fine. If you're saying evolution, the evolutionary cause of the creation of disgust is that, well, okay, fine. But that's not what all disgust is about. That's for sure. But then on the side, maybe we can get back to that later. But this is what I really don't like. So in her book,
A lot of things you don't like today.
I know it's like a lot of things I hate. Like, in her book, she released a book recently called "Don't where did I Don't Look, Don't Touch, Don't Eat." Um, and in the book, let me just quote from the book a little bit. And I want to quote from one of her papers, her scientific papers I got online too. But first, let me quote from her book. For us, this is her and her group, there is a simple and parsimonious solution to the puzzle of disgust. Disgustive systems evolved to defend animals from attack by parasites, the tiny invisible predators that attack by stealth and eat their host alive. It prevents the entry of pathogens through multiple portals, the skin, the airways, the genitals, as well as the mouth. No magical folk beliefs. That's Paul Rosen. No Freudian repression or existential denial of death is needed to explain disgust. Then by Freudian repression, I should have quoted earlier, but what she throws Miller in with Freudian theories. In the book, she says, like, Miller's theories are, she loves his descriptions, by the way. She thinks his descriptions are spot on, apparently. But she says, but in the end, Miller locates disgust in kind of Freudian theories of the unconscious or something. No. I just straight up no. And after I read that, I was like, did you even read the book? Nobody who read the book carefully could believe that. Freud.
Like he almost had to like make room for Freud unwillingly.
I know, right? The whole book, he's wrestling with Freud. I mean, okay, yeah, he takes Freud seriously in some areas, even though, like, just read the introduction. He's definitely not. He
It sounded like he had to rewrite the book to make it better.
Exactly. Like, he knew some Freudian guy who said, like, stop being so unfair to Freud. So he had to, go back and rewrite it to give more cred to Freud than he was giving originally. Right?
See, that's the problem, though, because even giving any Freud in there, that's like getting a virus in your blood, just spreads and
gets in there.
Spreads.
Contaminated by Freud.
Contamination.
Yes.
So again, this is wrong. This is a misrepresentation of Miller's views up to now. Okay, so then she wrote a paper a little bit before she wrote this book, and it's even worse here. It
got worse.
This one's worse. Although this comes up in the book too. But she wrote a paper called "Dirt, Disgust, and Disease: Is Hygiene in Our Genes?" I do like the title. So, but in the paper, she writes about how her and her groups are really into this evolutionary theory, and there's a series of objections, like from people like Paul Rosen and all these other people about like disgust and its relation to disease, and how Paul Rosen rejects the idea that disgust is disease avoidance and stuff. But okay, in this big list of stuff, Miller is back in here again because she likes Miller's descriptions. But this sentence I definitely do not like. She talks about how Miller's descriptions are great, though, here's a quote, though Miller categorically rejects any evolutionary origins for disgust. This categorically rejects any. All right, so
Really?
Again, totally misrepresenting Miller. Again, okay, let me just read just a couple passages just to clear this up just a little bit. Page 16. I have no great stake in the debate between universalism and particularism, being somewhat mealy-mouthed about it, as the reader may have discerned. Right? As a social historian, I incline much more to nature or nurture more than nature to explain social arrangements and human behavior. So first, right off the bat, he says he's not into this. He's not taking sides on this one way or the other. But he continues. He talks about how, in general, he's more of a nurture kind of guy, but when I had children who seemed to arrive with a good portion of their character already impressed upon them, I was pushed a little bit more toward nature, so that I now probably lie at the divide between it and nurture, with my heart, however, still in the nurture camp. Okay, that is not a categorical rejection of evolutionary explanation. Let me jump a little bit further, a little bit more meatier passage here, which is, listen to this and tell me if this is a categorical rejection of universalism. We see here he's discussing Mary Douglas, but he says, might it be that disgust itself has a structure which it imposes on cultural orderings? This is hardly an outrageous proposition. Cultures surely vary in the degree to which they call on disgust to back their moral orderings. But to the extent that they look to disgust, or something like it, rather than say guilt, fear, or certain things must follow. Even here, culture can override the tendencies that come with the disgust affect. But it has to work harder to do so. Once a culture erects the classification pure/impure, the clear and free-falling will be valued against the slimy and viscid. However, another constraint imposed, blah, 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 blah. It continues on like this. But, again, wrong, right? These are all indications that he's more than open to evolution having a role to play here. Just that his focus is a little bit more on the varieties of disgust and what that says, and I don't know. I think this is a good place to start and say, like, I think his views are being misread, misinterpreted in even up to now, right up to now. This woman like wrote this book just this last year. Because like all what he says is easily fits in with what she's talking about too. I mean, all he says is disgust is defense against contamination by what is low. It's a prevention, a motion that tries to prevent pollution. I don't see how those two theories couldn't sit together.
Yeah.
At all.
Definitely.
Maybe this woman has a headcanon on for him.
I don't know. Like, first of all, it's not. I don't know. That theory just seems to almost present itself in a certain way. Like, oh, we evolved this emotion because of germs, right? I mean, like, even I thought of that one. So, yeah. I mean, it's not like, it takes a rocket scientist to do that, whatever backwards thinking they did to get that theory up and running. But I'm sure it's probably true or close to the truth. Like, cultures are going to have to just do a lot more hard work to get their people to eat cockroaches. But they can do it. Or, ectoplasm is always just going to be a little bit more gross than a nice, clean iPhone.
Yes.
I mean, like, that ectoplasm is just going to be grosser. But, I mean, it's not impossible to undo that. You can undo that. It just takes more work.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of a lot of interesting stuff can happen with disgust. I mean, it's not so straight up. I mean, like Nathan Nussbaum talks about this, and Paul Rosen talk about this, how disgust is not just about danger, right? No. It is not. So they did, like Rosen and people did tests about this. They show you something that is not dangerous, but you're still disgusted by it, like dog poop ice cream. Or there are cognitive elements that play a role. Like what they'll do is they gave people a vial, like a smell in like a vial, I can't remember. They smelled it, and half the people they told it was cheese, and the other half they told it was feces. The people who they told with cheese, they liked the smell. When they told them it was feces, they hated it. They found it disgusting,
Mm-hmm.
right? So the smell itself is highly manipulable. All you need to change is the origin story, and it gets reconnected with something else. But the smell alone is open to this huge amount of context to throw it into. So it's not so cut and dry sometimes.
So whenever anyone tells me I stink, I'll just say I'm cheese.
It's well, you are cutting the cheese.
Oh, okay. Well, in that case, then we can just blame it right on the cheese.
Yes,
Right. Like I don't know, isn't a little bit of this like I like this definition of it's really kind of a powerful image of what disgust is contamination by the low. It's a powerful image. But I mean, there's a little bit more nuance to it. Sometimes it seems like it's a contamination by the low, and that low is felt as threatening because it's a little bit out of place, right? It's not doing what it should. It's not obeying. Sometimes it's not obeying the rules quite correctly, right? Like there shouldn't be feces on my table.
But if you walked into
feces
like
in my
a
toilet,
farm,
or on the farm, it's not gonna make me so disgusted, right? Yeah, okay, there's cow pies out there on the field, but cow pies on my computer, that's a different level of disgusting. Right?
I mean, even like he talks about with parents too, in my experience too. I mean, in the beginning, changing diapers is not the most pleasant experience, but you get used to it. It becomes normal almost in a way. It's not by any means. It's not a fun thing to do, but after a while, you kind of like, whatever.
But when that poop gets somewhere else.
Yeah, I know. God, it's
then it suddenly becomes a different animal.
Yeah.
And he brings up a much more kind of chilling example. We're gonna jump right to the end of the book, but I mean,
oh God, the story at the end of the book with Orwell.
But I mean more in reference to African Americans and how, let's just put it bluntly, they were considered disgusting by a class of ruling white people for a long period of time. But they were allowed to take care of their babies, serve them food. Right, but don't worry. They weren't disgusting there. They didn't smell. They didn't smell them. They didn't disgust them when they were in their right place. Right? Yeah, you can handle my food. Yeah, you can push my baby. Yeah, you can drive my taxi. But that's okay because you should be there. Yeah. But when you start coming into my neighborhood, or you're around me when you shouldn't be there, then something starts to happen. There's like a fear that the low is coming towards you, and you're going to be infected.
There's got to be definitely. There's got to be a kind of sense of vulnerability to it.
Out of control. A loss of control. Yeah, that's probably true.
Yeah. Well, traditionally, the persecuted classes, one of the first things people have done is label them as rapists. Yes, saying these people are going to physically contaminate you. There's a bunch of stuff in Mein Kampf about how the Jews are lurking in the dark, waiting to prey on their victims. I've read similar statements said about African Americans from old American literature. Jared.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that, just in a general sense, about disgust fascinates me. It's totally visceral. It's a total body reaction. There are few emotions that you have that can really motivate you, like a disgust emotion can. He makes this really interesting statement in the book. It's really sad, kind of. It made me sad when he said it. He said that, when you look as a third person on two people in love, I mean, you can be moved a little bit, but you don't really know kind of what's going on over there. It's kind of like their own little private world. You can be moved a little bit, but when you see someone act contemptible on a screen, or when you see someone do something disgusting on a screen, or you see it in your life, that emotion hits you like a wave. And he suggests that there's nothing quite that brings people together quite like these emotions, right?
Mm.
In other words, kind of a group based on similar disgust and contempt is going to have a little bit of stronger bond than a group based on the power of love. Because love is kind of, I don't know, a little more private, and contempt and disgust are going to be more visceral and powerful and binding. I don't know, like it reminds me of, for example, the atheist movement on YouTube. They were a group of people bound by their contempt for religious people. Justified contempt in certain. I don't mean to say that to downgrade what they're doing. I'm just saying that they were kind of brought together by their mutual contempt, maybe even disgust. I don't know, but contempt of religious people on YouTube, and that was their community. But above and beyond that, they were nothing together, right? And they found that out a little while ago. They found out very well that they weren't that similar, a lot of them, and thus became the great divide. And I think a lot of groups maybe kind of end up like that, that after that initial festival of contempt and violence is done, you look around and you realize that these guys don't really share other things that you care about. I don't know. That was a kind of a sad thing, but it's something powerful about disgust and contempt that was a little shocking for me.
Yeah. I mean, this kind of gets into where he talks about how disgust, you feel disgust at things, at norms, types of norms that truly have you in their grip, right? Like, this is serious business. You are fully in these things. Like, just going back a couple of videos when we talked about the unbearable lightness of being in kitsch, like how those Suntory ads, I hate those. They literally disgust me.
Yeah. I can't look.
I can't look at that kitschiness on the screen. I remember we talked about how I can't. I just have to close out the window. To me, it's just this sappy, like you said, cheap, easy kind of emotion. Well, I don't know if emotional manipulation is the right word, but reading this book, I really did think about how much I was in the grip of this kind of disgust at the ease by which this kind of this suggested to me. Like, oh, just throw a girl on the screen wearing a kimono and giggling and being the also wonderful wife you wish you had, right? Cutesy, right? In this world where everything is perfect, right? Didn't like it. I didn't like it, but like I guess I don't know. I think it showed me as in the grip of something like this, like a hatred of this ease, this total ease, and I don't know. I still, even after discussing that, even discussing how irrational some of it was, I still find those ads disgusting.
Yeah, no, that was one of the fascinating things, because after he got done with, I mean, there's a lot of terrible things he talks about in this book, just disgusting things, but sometime in the 17th century, disgust started to be used to justify taste.
Yes, I wanted to talk about that, yeah.
And that's kind of, I think, where your disgust feelings are coming from.
Yeah.
As in a sense of taste. Good taste and bad taste, and that's how you distinguish yourself.
I mean, I love this quote from him where he says, when he's talking about taste, this is where he's talking about taste. He says, perhaps pure taste is a kind of disgust. Disgust as in the capacity to judge and recognize the tawdry, the cheap, the fulsome, and it rejects the easy pleasure of the senses, the taste of the tongue, preferring instead the more demanding. You know, like, I don't know, my friends around me, I don't know, they love to be beer snobs, my people around me.
Yeah.
Like, people love to be beer snobs. It's interesting. I don't have a pony in this or a dog in this. I don't know what metaphor I should use. I'm not in the beer snob game, but like it seems like so many people around me are beer snobs. Like that's not a good enough beer. That's terrible. That's horrible beer. How could you like that? But it's a whole gambit. Like maybe I'm more like an art snob. But I just like what he says too. The disgusting. Jesse, do you recommend? No. The disgusting is that which poses no resistance. It is the easy, that which just happens unless we cultivate and train to avoid and reject it. It's the path of least resistance, the allure of sinking back into the belly. More precisely, this is the taste, talking about taste now. More precisely, the disgust of the refined, their good taste is a revulsion at other people's lack of taste. Wow.
Very
yes.
powerful passage.
Yes, that's me, I think. When I am, it does sicken me to think people watch those ads and be like, yay, or even like, I mean, on a little bit lesser level, like what they did to Death Note, the live action Death Note, like the fact that some people are like, oh, that's amazing, right? Yeah. Ugh.
I know. That, like the worst part is like that feels like a contamination. Like,
I know. How
could I like you if you said you like that new live drama of Death Note? Like, I don't know. Something's wrong with you, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. Something. There's a vast river between us. I know. It reminds me of what Jim Sterling said. Remember what he always talks about? He says, "Never have I received more hate than when I said I liked a game." Dynasty Warriors and Devil May Cry. He's been kind of championing these games and Call of Duty for a little while, not anymore. But yeah, I mean that comes probably from a visceral disgust at how could you possibly like that? How could you enjoy that? Yeah. PC Master Race, I guess, or something, but it's always trying to make one more rank upwards. These kind of rankings and values of that reek of kind of this disgust feeling, or they have an awful lot of that lurking in the background.
Yeah, I mean, this is like it's areas like this where I really think about like his definition of the disgusting, which is the low that drags you down, the low that contaminates you, the low that if you let yourself sink into it, you would no longer be the kind of person you are, right? You would be less of a person. Just thinking like I was trying to think of like people who disgust me. Like it's tough. I mean, I'm not a really disgusted guy all that much. But like one name that just popped into my mind was Ishihara.
Oh God.
Ishihara Shintaro, the former governor of Tokyo. He is I think there is no discussion with me in that man. I think he is just a disgusting guy. I don't know. Do you guys think I would be shocked if you disagreed? Actually, he's a pretty disgusting guy, don't you think?
Yeah. Well, fairness, he probably thinks the same thing about you.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, I mean we're at odds. I think.
That's if you remember when we were wondering if she was when we used to actually meet in person. So, and again, I apologize for disrupting that cycle. But when we had that TV crew and they were looking to interview people about Ishihara's run to get into the national government at like 82.
Yeah.
And they really were like trying to fish good things out of me. It's like I'm like, well, I think he should just. I was trying to be polite there. It's like I think he didn't do it. I mean, this is just not a good idea on his part. Not it's like, well, don't you respect this, this hierarchy? It's like,
yeah.
Not from him.
Yeah.
You do some comment. And I said, okay, well, yeah, he's got some hierarchy, but perhaps he should use it for something else.
Yeah, do you respect the hierarchy of cancer too? It's really up and
Yeah,
at 'em
yeah,
attitude. Like, no, no.
yeah. I mean, like, there's so many things you can hate about Ishihara, but I mean, for me, the last straw was when he blamed
Oh,
the earthquake. He blamed the Great Earthquake on the Japanese people themselves and the people of Tokyo who were too greedy. So the people in Fukushima had to die for our
Well,
greed.
he would know. I mean, he was their little king. So,
Yeah, yeah.
and king of the greedy. I
King of
mean,
the greedy.
right from the horse's mouth, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I love
Is
his magical thinking too. Like, your inner state caused the outer disaster. Like miasma spilled out into the world, and
I
God
know.
punished us by sending us a great wave to cleanse the land. Like, if there's anyone like drenched in magical thinking and like half like I don't know medieval thoughts, it's him, right? I mean, half of these is just total magical thinking.
well, no, he was a guy who, when you're talking about categories and people saying their categories, he was a guy who had his little categories, his little roles. His famous line that, again, I can't believe he got away with was, the women who have lost their reproductive capabilities have no right to live. That line. He had a clear role for women in society, and if once you were no longer able to fulfill that role, you were just discardable.
Yeah,
So,
spoken like a true fascist.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So,
Uh,
no right to live. You were more than discardable. You should be discarded.
yeah. Like it's interesting though how these disgusts are piling on each other. Like Ishihara was disgusted at the materialism of the Japanese, I guess, that led him to this kind of magical thinking. And here I am disgusted at his disgust that led to magical thinking, and his disgust piled on disgust, piled on disgust.
He also has the disgust of hypocrisy because he cheated on his taxes too.
Yeah, right.
You greedy people.
Yes.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, that sucks when people are so greedy like that.
Yeah.
But I did have to say, like, I just thought when I was just talking to people too, like, I found that, when I said, like, I asked people, like, what is some action you found disgusting, or someone who did something you found disgusting? Doesn't have to do with like, cockroaches or worms or something, right? In general, the answer got came up in the territory of hypocrisy. A kind of hypocrisy or a kind of a lack of consistency in action, like somebody who just kind of, I'm gonna be really easy on myself, but like really tough on my maid or something. You know what I mean? Like,
Waiter or something.
a waiter, right? Somebody who goes and just really insults their waiter as though they're like king of the earth or something, but it hates it when anybody talks down on them. People like this who lack a kind of consistency, who are kind of hypocrites. I found that come up a lot, and I do find that kind of hypocrisy disgusting also in a lot of people.
Yeah, I think the Japanese have a keen sense for, I don't know, the disgusting, seeing as how this is a society that has very strong hierarchical values, and they have a very keen awareness of where people stand in relation to other people. Maybe it's loosening up a little, but it's very present all the time. Like I mean, and they have their words for disgust now too that they use all the time, or at least teenage girls use all the time.
Yeah.
Kimoi, kimochiwari. But they have such suggestive words too, like what seiri teki ni muri. Right?
Yeah.
How would you even translate that?
Yeah.
What
Physiologically.
physiologically we can't possibly be like
My body's just rejecting them.
yeah. My body rejected you, right? Like
It's a full body emotion right there, yeah.
Yeah, like women say that to men when they don't want to go out with them, right? It's just this incredible statement, like "seiri teki ni muri," like whoa, like it's not just us two. It's just on a physiologically, we're just impossible. My body rejects you. And then they ask, they always ask online, why? What do men do that make you seiki moody? And like, obviously one of the answers is always going to be, well, they're otaku. So we know exactly where otaku stand in Japanese society. They are the contemptible. They're the low.
Maybe even less than contemptible, right?
Yeah,
if only they were contemptible.
Yeah,
sometimes
right.
they're just, they're treated as just disgusting, like less than contemptible.
If they're lucky enough to have that disgust, right? Sometimes they're just invisible. But if they're lucky enough to be visible, then they get the honor of being disgusting. So, got a winning scenario.
Otakuism does, according to the Japanese media, it does poison.
Yes, they're always trying to blame murders and death on otaku all the time here. Like, well, he's a murderer, and he watched anime. Okay, thank you for that very necessary tidbit.
When they found the little girl who'd been kidnapped, she was watching anime.
Yeah, that's true. I remember that. I remember that one.
Otaku had showed her anime. He was trying to indict her. I'm sure is what the image they were trying to paint.
Yeah, right. Well, we all know it's just the udon and the sushi that does it. Come on, I mean, like they're all eating that too, right? So that never gets in there. It's always the anime. That disgusting, lowly anime.
I would have laughed so hard if we actually had a situation where a girl, of course, no girl's being kidnapped, but theoretically, if rather than the girl being kidnapped, it was, she was watching anime. It was when the girl was found, she was eating rice.
Oh my God, that's the meal of villains and criminals. Oh, and everyone else too. I mean, like I can tell, like this is just a highly cultural thing. Like these are people that we look down on. These are the butt of our jokes. They're the focus of our contempt. They're the reason people get polluted and they commit crimes. Like this is just another. I mean, they've got plenty of excuses as to why things go bad, but this is just another one in the long list of excuses.
Yeah. If they are bad people, why don't they succeed in society?
Yeah.
Because there's no way society is geared against them.
No.
That can't be true.
Society is totally fair.
Yeah, totally fair. 100%.
Yeah, why don't they just get married quick and have kids? Come on.
Yeah. It's just as easy as that. Come on, guys.
Yes. And this is certainly a society of shame. Although, like, William E. Miller has kind of convinced me that maybe a lot of societies are just societies of shame. But not rocking the boat.
Yeah.
Can be quite a virtue. So,
But like just the larger point, though, I just want to say, like, all this is about how, I don't know. Long and short of it, I'm pretty well convinced by his idea that disgust is towards what is low that brings you down, that contaminates you. I mean, the kind of disgust we deal with, I mean, does it seep into the level of gooey worms? I'm not sure sometimes, but like for a large part of the time, like for example, like the guy who eats only organic food, and he's disgusted at me when I eat my hamburger at McDonald's. His concern is not for my health. You know what I mean? Like he thinks I'm a lower person. Right. He thinks I have a lesser. It's not about health. It's about kind of a higher level of purity for him, or there's all these people who I had a friend who just he's one of these guys who endlessly complains about everyone's these days is looking at their phones. Oh my God, every single time I met him, man, why can't people get off their phones? Everyone's lost in their phones, and stuff like that. I mean, he really did hold these people to a lower level. I mean, he routinely talked about them as zombies, as less than human, and things like this. I mean, it really is this kind of stuff. This viewing as something is contaminating and low is I think the core of most of the disgust we feel in our lives.
Yeah, I mean, like, you can just see that even from something as simple as, I don't know, horror movies, people being contaminated and infected by whatever substance or becoming the monster. I
The T
mean,
virus.
hmm?
The T virus.
The T
The
virus,
virus, yeah.
the T virus, zombies, infection being brought down low. I mean, even the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is to a certain extent that a little bit. It's kind of being brought down to the level of the animal, which is not quite the same thing. But Alien too. I mean, like Alien is just rife with fear and disgust of being feminized, the disgust of being raped. These are just constant, I don't know, tropes you can find in horror movies. This kind of lingering fear of something that won't go away, that brings you down. I don't know. I think you can especially find it in people's relation to, I don't know, virginity, things like that. Or you know, when
they found out their favorite enemy character is
has already slept around. Right now, she's been. I mean, what's the feeling? What are they feeling when they hear that she already had sex? It's like, well, now she's lesser, right? Like I don't know, like they use very suggestive words on the internet, right? Like what do they call it? Like in our cultural space, we use the word cum dumpster. In Japan, they use meat toilet. But whatever it is, it's very subjective. It's suggestive that semen has a way of destroying and degrading whatever it touches. Thus, you become a dumpster when you get the cum, or a toilet when you have the semen. It immediately brings that thing down a level.
Yes. I mean, there's some really wonderfully suggestive passages about the role of semen in misogyny and self-hate too, which are very great.
I mean, even in Japan too. I mean, they took radiation as a kind of impurity, right? I mean, after the disaster, people are like running around and freaking the diet and trying to like touch each other and get radiation on each other.
Oh God, that's right. Yeah.
Remember that? And like little kids, sometimes they're getting picked on because they're from Fukushima. So like, you get away from me! Don't get your radiation cooties on me. Even that kind of magical thinking about radiation, not a lot, but it appeared here in a very childish way. But maybe that's the way it appears, in a very stupid and childish way.
Alright. You want to get in a little bit of how? So we talked about like a little bit about how disgusting things are, things that lower you, and how disgust misfires. It involves kind of this magical thinking sometimes. It affects people who really did nothing wrong per se, but they've been connected with the line of the disgusting. But he also gets some really interesting stuff about how disgust makes things more pleasurable. How the existence of disgust can improve things.
This is going to get us back to our first video.
Yes, all the way back to the very first video we put on YouTube, which is the "What about Freud on the Universal Tendency?" on that one. Our first, it was all sorts. This, I mean, we talked about a lot of this already, as far as it relates to sex and stuff, and Freud's theory about sexual pleasure. But I did like how he brought up the fact that some of these things, some pleasures we get because you can't have them usually. It's this transgression over the boundary that makes them good. And of course, a lot of this is in sex. But maybe, I don't know, maybe not everything. I was wondering if I don't know. I wonder if you could take it in weird places, like what about like things like authenticity. What if the pleasure of seeing an authentic person comes from the fact that you don't get access to that usually, right? Um, you get to see what's underneath the hood a little bit. It's a little bit of relationship building. In the same way that he suggests love has this, one of the perks of love is that you're able to get access to stuff you don't normally get access to. But I like when I say authenticity, I mean like this culture of authenticity that people have. They like to see this, like somebody keeping it real, right? They kind of feel disgust at the ease of being swayed by the crowd. Here's a guy I finally get to see like what's going on in his heart, right? We're close, we're close enough so that he or she shows me his true, authentic feelings. So it has this bonding over this, over this point, the fact that we're close enough that you're sharing. But on top of it, don't you think some of this also is about how like people who are just keeping it real, they get a pass. They get a little bit of a pass. This is their excuse. I'm just keeping it real. But I mean, doesn't it work along these lines of how much, like, well, I let you in. I let you in, so you got to give me this leeway. I let you into the realm of the disgusting. Don't be surprised when you get there, right? And there's a shock, like, how dare you? I let you in. I granted you access to the authentic me, quote unquote. And here you are criticizing me because I let you in. I think disgust does play a role in here too. No?
It's a very suggestive thought. I like it a lot. I mean, you're kind of suggesting that it plays the same role love does.
Yeah.
With disgust. In other words, like the closer you let someone into you, the more willing you are to kind of forgive them their, I don't know, disgusting aspects.
Doesn't he makes this,
to be close?
Remember he makes this thing about humor, how he says humor is transgression that's allowed. But like, doesn't humor fit in this too? Like, there's this big kerfuffle now about like these darn wimpy college kids who can't take our radical, edgy humor or whatever. But I mean, part of this is kind of like, I think a lot of people really do feel that jokes too are a gateway to authenticity, or a gateway to a place where certain things can be transgressed here because of the closeness, because of this setting. This is a comedian giving his routine, so certain things are allowed here that aren't allowed other places. But that's part of the relationship you develop with the comedian. Like, if you ever, like, I like Louis C.K. and I don't think Louis C.K. is a good example for some of these things. But anyway, don't you? Some people really have like a worship of Louis C.K. or they did like of George Carlin too. I mean, like, they really feel a strong bond. I mean, of course he says interesting things, but aside from that, I think part of the bond comes from the fact that we're let in. We're let in further than we could see before. Whenever I see somebody talk about Louis C.K., they're always like, I can't believe the stuff he says. He lets you in so deep. He talks about how, he hides in the toilet. And he was hiding when his kids were born. He'd hide in the toilet because he was too afraid to, take care of them. Well, I can't believe, he lets you in that deep. Don't you think, like, some of the anger people feel toward these people who object to comedians, like, and they say, oh, that's racist, you can't say that or whatever. They feel that, like, remember, Miller says, for love, about love, he says, for the third part of love, he says, we understand the disgusting behavior. Some benefit from love is we understand the disgusting behavior or substance to be a privilege of intimacy, which would be a grave offense if it were not understood as a privilege, right? So I get to sleep with my wife, but if I just thought it was like, hey baby, right? I get to sleep with you just because you'll sleep with anyone, right? That would be a pretty grave offense, right? it's almost ruining the nature of the. They feel like it's spoiling the nature of the relationship. Like you're taking advantage of the nature of the relationship by kind of
imposing rules.
imposing these rules on them. Um,
Yeah, I mean, like, I feel like there's a difference between like Louis C.K. hiding in the toilet and, saying black people like watermelon.
oh yeah.
Okay, but I mean, like, then again, I don't know. I kind of still feel like a little bit the way William Ian Miller feels about some of this stuff too. Is like this is just like the return of the repressed. Like,
Mm.
yeah, you're right. I totally agree with your theory, by the way. Like, in other words, like, maybe him making a joke like that or something. I don't know why you'd be making a joke like that, but um, maybe some of the chuckles and the laughter that come from these edgy jokes or whatever work specifically because the values have been completely internalized, right?
Yeah.
And they wouldn't be shocking, or they wouldn't need those special spaces if they were is working as insidiously as they used to be, right? And maybe some of the chuckles that come with it are the chuckles of how could you? I can't believe you can jump that far, right? Not even per se agreement, like you said, but more of like, wow, we're really hitting the real dirt here, the real pavement here. This is some real stuff, right?
This is like a transgression, right? This is a transgression.
How could you do that? It's amazing, and then the chuckle and the amazement kind of comes from there. Not so much as I agree with you, ha ha ha.
Mm.
So I mean, like,
some of it's almost presented as vulnerability, even maybe.
Yeah.
But somebody like Louis C.K., it is anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, right. I mean, he has that great bit, like, of course, but maybe, right? That of course, like he says, of course, kids that have nut allergies should be protected. They should be kept away from nuts, and we should do our best to take care of them. But maybe, maybe we should just let them eat the nuts, and in 2 weeks we wouldn't have to worry about this problem ever on Earth, right? Because they'd all die, right? So I mean, like, the joke here is like, he said, like, inside of me, there's always two things: of course, but maybe. Of course, but maybe. And the joke is, that transgression there, that unthinkable thought that he's going to share with you. The awe of it, the how could you say that part, the authenticity, it's all there. But again, like, the laughter at this joke doesn't mean that we, are seriously considering killing every child with a nut allergy either. I mean, it's because it's unthinkable that it's funny in a certain sense.
That would just be right out nutty.
Yes, that would be nutty. Okay, yes, I am in awe of that fun, but for a slightly different reason. Yeah, but good. Yeah, I like this idea. I mean, it seems like I don't know, like, for example, I don't know, everyone's worst nightmare now is that the social justice police are going to impose a new, I don't know, crazy order on us. But just let's assume that storyline is true and it happens, right? They impose all these kind of shame morals on us, and we can't say what we really think anymore, and we're all trapped inside of these kind of, I don't know, politically correct bubbles. I don't know. It just seems like even if that world were to come true, which, again, I'm not saying it is, but that would only make these jokes increase, right? I mean, I think that like, the more you repress, the more it's just going to seep out in different other crazy different spaces, right? It's never going to be stopped, right? In fact, you might make it, in a certain sense, even worse. So I don't know. I just don't see that ever disappearing, per se. Like, the repression in one area is just going to lead to an outburst in the other areas. I don't see. I don't worry too much about it disappearing, per se.
Yeah. I mean, he I don't know. He gives these really interesting passages about how, like, norms that are discussed upheld can be transgressed in words. They can be transgressed in talking, but, like, norms that shame have a grip on, you can't really transgress without feeling the extremely unpleasant feeling of being shameful. Like I mean, like you said, like Lisa Cave, he made like just a straight up like all black people eat watermelons joke.
Yeah.
What is the level? What's happening there? Maybe is it too real? Is it like some racist person something that some racist person would say? Is it's too close to that, or the historical situation we're in is too close to that would impose shame rather than disgust, right? What maybe there's some gap between those two. I'm not sure, but I don't know. I'm not. That passage is really interesting. I'm still not sure what to make of it, though.
Mm.
I know. It just kind of seems like there's like a mixture of emotions in
Yeah.
them. Like I don't know. Like I see a lot of kind of I don't know hand wriggling and kind of a lot of fear about this kind of quote unquote racist humor, and it does deserve to be. Whatever you're going to say about it, just go ahead and say I don't care. Criticize it all the day long. I don't care. But maybe some of the fear can be a little bit relieved in the sense that maybe not everyone laughing there was laughing because they think black people all eat watermelons, or even believe that in any way, right? That like this is the shocking and the boundary jumping and the transgression is just something people enjoy. They like the darkness. They have to play with the darkness. They have to play with disgust, and it's just going to be something that people are just going to be attracted to. And wherever you start drawing those boundaries, there's going to be those people always looking off at the edge, and in maybe just like a stupid child, right, trying to play with how far can I go.
I mean, this is the thing. I was thinking about this actually a little bit. And this is the thing with like, quote unquote edge lords, who do enjoy this transgression. But like, I love the fact that there's a disgust at the edge lord too, right? Because this transgression then begins to look all too easy.
Yeah.
All too simple. Just another edgelord, right? Oh, isn't that difficult? Shocking people. Wow, I bet that takes a lot of guts. I can just run my mouth off about any racist or sexist thing too. So it's layered, right? I think there's a lot of edgelord disgust now too. So who knows? I mean, but it is interesting that like at least what I see of this hating on like it has to do with like this lack of resistance, this ease, this all too simple formula, this dumbness about it, right?
I mean, that's the double disgust that's going on. I mean, the people that are quote unquote not politically correct are disgusted at
exactly
the stupidity and the ease that they call the other people brainwashed fools for doing, and then I guess our side or a side, the other side, kind of sees what they're doing as just them obeying their stupid inborn prejudices without a moment of self-reflection or thought.
Yeah.
But both of those kind of have this kind of, I don't know, dual image of each other as brainwashed losers that don't think.
Yeah. Good stuff. Where do you want to go next? We got into this big thing about contempt, disgust, democracy, and democracy. That's a large chunk of the end of the book. I don't know how far you want to get into that. Like, I did think it was interesting, just first how he diverged contempt and disgust a little bit. How contempt can pretend a threat's not there, but disgust can't. Right. Even though in contempt maybe we're jockeying for position, but maybe contempt's trying to maintain a smug superiority. But disgust can't do that.
Yeah.
Disgust is just your vulnerability. Right there. You got to get away. You can't be there.
Yeah. Or in a different way, maybe I think contempt. It can demand distance if it wants to, but it doesn't necessarily demand distance. You can be contemptuous and still be very close. In fact, like a kind of almost caring parent or loving of your underlings or subordinates. It can be very close, but disgust will never accept that. Disgust demands distance.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah, yeah, yeah. He does like he. I like how Miller's view of contempt is like, contempt might be necessary for a lot of really good things. Maybe contempt could be necessary for things like
Love.
helping people out in need, love, dating, right? Like I don't know. I think this is in one of his other books, but I think he even speculates on how like calling guys cute might be like a bit of revenge by women on men, like a kind of a bit of contempt, kind of like putting them in their place for all the contempt this rained down on them. But here it is, like we're developing our relationship with this kind of, I contempt you a little bit, I put a little contempt on you, you put a little contempt on me.
I think that's incredibly accurate.
Mm. Mm.
I think that a lot of relationships are just kind of that flipping up and down of, I don't know how can you put it easily, picking on each other
Yeah,
a little bit, um, in a very playful way, right? In a way that you can forgive.
yeah,
But there's a lot of, I don't know. You on purpose talk down to them, they on purpose talk down to you. You play with them, you pick on them, they pick on you, and that then it all kind of hopefully balances out in the end. And like you're not just the one always being picked on, because that's kind of, maybe that would be the completely unhealthy relationship where you're always
yeah.
getting it and you're never giving it back. Um,
Which is the interesting thing. Like, I mean, that would be the equal relationship, the one where both of you are available to have contempt,
yeah,
right? I was just thinking about like how we talked about how perhaps contempt might be one of the foundations for equality and democracy, and I just thought it was interesting. Like, I don't know, just thinking about the whole. Wow, I'm not gonna do anything crazy here, but like the Gamergate kind of stuff is an interesting like I don't know, maybe I'm reading people wrong, but like one of the things, for example, the image they have of somebody like Anita is like she turned off her comments so she can kind of like bark stuff down at us, but she gives us no say back, as though she's like holier than thou, and she can give her proclamations from the mount, and then we're not allowed to contempt back at her. This is not an equal relationship. Anita thinks she's queen of the universe or whatever. Okay, well, at least that's what I think some people feel. And then it's interesting. On the other side, though, you get this, like people who feel contempt for somebody like Sargon of Akkad. It's interesting. Like just when you listen to people who don't like him, it's always kind of like, oh, here comes Sargon again, thinking he's holier than thou, thinking he's smarter than everybody in the room, right? He doesn't really listen to anybody's criticism. Um, it's just interesting that both sides feel that the other side doesn't take them seriously at all, as though they're coming down high on the mounts. They don't feel equal treatment in discussion. I just like that, like the how. Maybe there would be something to that, like if we could equally reign, if there was the perception of equal reigns of contempt, maybe the discussion might be a little bit more grounded. But I mean, this is all perception. I'm not saying this is really what's happening by any means. I think this is just a lot of perception.
yeah. I don't know. I sometimes I feel like I read like a little bits of both from them, right? Like there are people that I feel like on each side feel this complete contempt upward. Like
Yeah,
they're gonna pull these, I don't know, whatever it's gonna be. Either it's like the SJWs who now rule the world, they're gonna pull them down from the stars and rip them and throw them naked into the streets. Or on the other side, it's like we're gonna bring down the establishment, the powerful, the privileged, white privilege, right? And we're gonna bring that privilege down. There's metaphors of pulling people down from the top, but there's also like sometimes from each side you get this little bit of like I don't know, contempt towards the lower. Sometimes it's a little bit mixed in. Like you get a good share of it, like inside the movement. It kind of feels like sometimes they're kind of poo-pooing on like these pathetic losers. Like especially maybe like for example the anti-Gamergate people. Like I don't know, you losers sitting around in your basement, you loser virgins in your basement.
Doritos, Cheetos.
Doritos, Cheetos, gamer bros. Like that feels like it's contempt downward, a little bit. Like, I mean, that's on the other side too. Like, and then the contempt downward on the other side is like, I don't know, you weirdo blue-haired feminist,
Problem glasses.
problem glasses, bad taste idiot, right? That's kind of like,
Yeah.
you
Or
are.
each side, like, what are they? Like on the anti side, they call them like man babies. They call these guys man babies. Like, there's a word of contempt if I ever heard one. But then the other side, what did I can't remember what Siren called that weird protest at the cry activism, cryavism. I can't remember, like crying activism, where you just go on stage and cry to get your way. Like, again, I love these so rich in contempt.
Professional victim.
Yeah, professional victim, right? Yeah.
Of course, I was thinking that's what I was talking about, how you're bringing people down. I'm wondering if that's what's kind of going on here, because this contempt that's discussed, oftentimes it goes up the social hierarchy, but it's not because you think the people in the social hierarchy are better than you. So you think if it would be very easy to imagine, then, like, you have if you had a very, well, we do have a very, you have a very strongly defined rich class and a working class. And both people are looking down on each other. Both people have a little bit of contempt and maybe even disgust for each other. But it's not because neither party has recognized the other as higher as far as a person.
Maybe they don't think they deserve their status, but I mean, they each use metaphors of being in power, right? Like the establishment, white privilege. These are metaphors of power and dominance, or whatever the SJWs that rule the world. Whatever this metaphor is, it's certainly a metaphor of we're down here in the dirt, and these guys are up there. We might not respect them.
Yeah.
Believe what they think at all. Like, I don't know. Like, when it comes to this, I mean, like, this is gonna get back to our first video. I really think that there's a visceral joy in tearing the high down. There's just visceral, pure joy in bringing what's high lower. It's just something core to being, I don't know, human, maybe. I mean, it's not only here, but it's also very active in our porn and other places.
Bringing that back to our first video, yeah.
Bringing it back to our first video. I mean, like, I don't know. How else do you explain, like, this kind of fascination with virginity? Like, a little bit, I think of it is like, it's to heighten the pleasure of sex, right? To keep the girl a virgin, but you're not supposed to talk about it. But eventually you have to do the deed, right? It has to get done somehow. And then when that happens, I guess the idea is that she's supposed to resist a little bit, right? She's not going to want it right away. And you have to, by your sheer force of your manly man powers, drag her down into the world of your super pleasure. And then after a short while of resistance, she's overcome by your cum. And then like you have dominated her. Like, I don't know, it really feels like this. I don't know, it feels like Nietzsche could fill in some of the blanks here. Like, I don't know, it just feels like there's like huge joy in power relations and tearing things down, bringing down the joy in degrading someone, bringing the high low is really a kind of a powerful joy that I don't know, I see it everywhere. Oh, wait a minute, no.
Yeah. I mean, like, I was trying to think about this in the sexual realm too. So for example, something like even getting pleasure in something that it's not even about bodily contact in sex, like her swallowing.
Yeah.
Right. It's better when she swallows, right? I mean, but she's not touching you. You know what I mean? Like, it's just that knowledge. It's just that knowledge that it's done, right? That something disgusting has happened.
Yeah, she's done something. She's been brought down lower. I mean, not that would go too weird about it, but there's like, there's whole genres of, like, I don't know, there's dirty old man videos where young women have sex with old men. Now, I mean, like, the pleasure here is seeing them brought down. Like they have to have sex with these disgusting old men, or like in Japanese, kind of in the weird areas of the darker side of like porn anime. Like there's always the orcs and the elves. Right? The elves are always prideful, powerful, pristine, and they're brought low by the orcs, the disgusting, dirty orcs. Like, I mean, doesn't this continue all the way to even like bestiality? The pleasure of bestiality is. I mean, I don't know if you're. I don't think you're even supposed to imagine yourself as the animal. It's kind of maybe some of it is the pleasure of seeing someone else brought down low.
Or even just on the less to the extreme level, the student and violating their teacher. The joke.
Yeah. There's plenty of those.
Yeah, the Kyoshi porn. There's a lot of that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean but I mean that's one of the key aspects of disgust. It's the fear that the lower are. That's like the people in your high horse world of disgust. That's exactly what you're afraid the lower are wanting to do, whatever they may be, germs, diseases, or your local, I don't know, racial minority. That's exactly what they want. Is they want them. They're just waiting to contaminate you and your buddies and your women and bring them down.
It was because like there's a point like I still don't know if I have straight in my head too, but I was going to trying to put together what he said about comedy and what he said about sex a little bit, because comedy is permitted transgression, and this is happening in the realm of sex too. Otherwise, it's rape, and I think that's a different. It could involve similar aspects, but like I think there's a different set of things going on with just simple like something rape, which is bringing somebody down, and this permitted transgression, which occurs during the sex act, right?
Oh, it's totally, yeah.
Right? I mean, like, there's a different set of things going on than I mean, I just don't want to. I want to keep these separate. For like, this has something to do with the fact that she has given permission for you to do this in here, also. No.
Yeah, right.
Maybe because we all think, disgust. There's that contaminating element of disgust, and we are aware, that forcing this contamination onto people, that becomes like a shame act, which contaminates us in return. So we want the consensual contamination because we don't receive contamination.
Oh, I suppose, yeah, you come off cleaner, right? Maybe, yeah. Well, that's totally me. Like, it's just all pure. Everything's pure. Everything you do with me is pure. It's purified, right?
I'm pure.
We all can be pure, at least for a little while.
Yeah, I don't know. Like when Freud starts talking about because like love does push back some disgust, but like he says, love doesn't push back all the disgust boundaries. They're still there a little bit. There's still stuff. I mean, like you're led into you can see your wife or your girlfriend or your partner in a way that no one ever sees them. Yes. And that's the special bond that you have. That's what love is able to do, is able to press those disgust boundaries, or at least lets them be able to share those with you, and so you can see this different side of them that no one did. And that's almost a proof that you're in a state of a kind of a love or a special relationship. Thanks, Misato.
And Kundera kind of got on this point a little bit too, in the unbearable lightness of being.
Yeah, this was in Ava too. This was what they told Shinji about Misato. You're in a special relationship because you can see that ugly side of her. This is what's special about the relationship. However, I mean, like, there's a point, but as we all know, we all know, you're not doing everything, right? Like, Like, and this is what Freud was talking about with, like, this is where when the higher wants to corrupt the lower or something, right? Like, in other words, it feels like like that's where rape starts running, right? Like it's the ultimate place where you don't have to ever care about what the other person feels, right? Like you're just permitted ultimate freedom. It's almost as if that other person really isn't there. You're not taking them into consideration at all. I mean, in some some of it is bringing down. Maybe you want to see those tears or something, but I mean, you are in domination over them. But it's the ultimate, I don't know, free license to do basically whatever you want to the other person. I mean, in some respects, like it's closer to masturbation than anything else, right? Because you don't have to take it. But I mean, like the weird part of that is a domination fantasy, right? It's when they do those rape fantasy comics or something, you got to have that tear.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
You got to have that tear in the eye because that's how you know is you dominated her. But that's all just for you, right? It's all about you. Whereas it seems like rape is more towards like total freedom from disgust, but it seems like you're alone, right? It kind of feels like you're isolated and alone, unless the one ends with like the person being raped loving you, which is this kind of crazy fantasy. Maybe but like when you have that lover, maybe you still have to suppress some things, but you get that. I don't know, the closeness, the specialness of being close to someone. Seems like a healthier relationship, maybe.
Yeah. I would think so. I think it's definitely healthier. Although I'd love to see a comic where it's just masturbation ends with a tear. But
well, those comics do exist. Or they just put a camera in like everybody's room one time or another, and like a lot of it just the tear is your own, but someone's gonna end up crying by the end of this. It's probably me. Who knew that when I was having sex with my wife, I was the one that was brought low? But
I think though I do think the permission does grant some kind of escape from some dirt though, like you said, Jesse, right? Like you're a little bit safer off, like right.
Yeah.
Not entirely though, right? Like you said though.
Like there's like this little bit that you can't do.
Yeah.
You can't quite fit in there, as it were.
Wow. What comics are you reading?
That was a metaphor. But, I mean, like, you know what I mean? Like, some stuff that's even still, there's still somebody there. Right? Those eyes are looking at you. You still have to wake up to them next day, right? And that'll always be there. But you're right. I mean, love is that special relationship thing. Lowers those disgust boundaries and also lets you wake up the next day with somebody else. At least it keeps them there.
Yeah. Which is good too.
This is good. Yeah. It's probably ultimately what people really want.
Yeah.
Ultimately.
I think some of the some people are just are filling frustrating holes in their lives sometimes with just sex. But anyway, that's a different episode, I think.
It can be frustrating when you're trying to fill it.
Wow.
With sex. Sorry.
I don't know. I don't know. This is just a fascinating area for me. I don't know. It's just really interesting, and how disgust works into this is really, really interesting. But this book itself, I don't know. We're going to talk about the last chapter at all.
Do you want to get into just a little bit about how disgust is like an enemy of democracy?
Yeah. I mean, it ends on a really sad note.
It does. It really does. The end. You're kind of like, whoa, that's the end. Okay.
Yeah.
But it kind of he gets into how maybe while contempt might be used for the ends of democracy.
Yeah. Mutual contempt.
Mutual contempt. Disgust.
I like how he says it's easier to be contemptuous of someone than to respect them. Which
Yeah,
again is
yeah.
another sad. Like, yeah, you're right. Yeah,
Yeah.
mutual contempt really works. Mutual respect, I don't know.
It's a little difficult. Yeah,
That's
yeah.
pretty hard. I don't know. We can't really do that. But hate each other, that we can do, and we've proven it every day.
Secretly think I'm better than you, right?
Like you're around to make me feel better about myself. Like that's why I keep you guys around, right? That's what it sounds
You're
like.
right. Did that make you feel good?
That's what it sounds like in the end of the day.
Yeah, I know.
But that's kind of feels truer than like, man, I have such respect for all of you. Unless, I just got done smoking. I don't know. Something crazy.
Wow.
It seems like it's mostly just a bunch of contempt.
Is this like listening to Sam Harris's podcast again?
Yeah.
If only we could have equal love for everyone, Sam.
No,
I know.
meaningless.
But like, yeah, right. And also, like, yeah, if you had equal love for everyone, then again, the boundaries wouldn't be there, so it would just be meaningless.
Then
And again, love is not. It's not as binding. It is not as visceral. It's not as powerful. Or at least a love that thin. A love that thin can't be that binding.
It is difficult to get into it. Like it's difficult to get into people's love. You know what I mean? Like it does seem very particular to them, unless we're in a group like.
Yeah. Or if you're like, if this guy came up to you and said, "I love you all, man. I love you all," and you're kind of like, really? Do you really?
That's disgusting.
Yeah, that's disgusting. Get away from me, you freak.
I need some space, like lots of it.
Yeah, like, we can't be this close. We need distance.
So, and actually, that's the point of the last chapter, like how disgust makes you want to get rid of these people. You don't want to even have them around, right? And like there's certain Orwell. This is what George Orwell talks about, how he's a socialist, but he could not stand being with some of the people he had devoted himself to lifting up and joining hands with, right?
Yeah. I believe he used some very. There's a powerful image he used in there.
Oh my God, it's so shocking. The stories. Ugh.
Yeah, I mean, it was not. He wasn't saying nice things. What did he say here? Let's see.
I love he knows how to turn a phrase. That's for sure.
Yes, he certainly does. It was very mean. Very mean phrase. Where is it? I'm looking for. I have to read it. It's such a great quote. The
juice one?
No. Just this one. This is how it starts. Like, it is summed up in 4 frightful words, which people nowadays are chary of uttering, but which were bandied around quite freely in my childhood. These words were the lower classes smell. Yeah, so we know exactly where they stand, right? They stink. The lower classes stink, and he can't stand them. Kind of like Tolstoy. He's a friend of the lower classes, but man, you wouldn't want to live next to him, would you?
Yeah. It's interesting how Miller gets into the fact that like these play on each other. Just your perception of them as low makes them stink. You know what I mean? Even though maybe they might not have a stench per se, but you perceive them to have one just by perceiving them as low.
Yeah, it's one of those constant weird little, I don't know, racist things you hear every so often is these people stink.
Yeah.
These people stink. Right? You always hear that in the weird corners, don't you?
You do. You really do.
They smell. They stink. But again, they only stink when they're out of place, right?
Yeah.
Not when they're taking care of your babies or driving your taxis. Then it's pretty tolerable. Get them too close. Ooh, wow. These people stink. Yeah, and then I just like it ended on such a pessimistic note. Like, well, he lived that time with that lower class family that I don't know. That guy put his finger in his chamber pot.
Yeah.
And then he would take that same finger and cut the bread with it.
Yeah.
And then he'd hand Orwell like a bread with like a brown stain on it. Yeah, that's pretty disgusting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's bad. or they kept a full chamber pot under the kitchen table once, and he's like, "That's it, I'm out of here, man."
Yeah.
he blew that pop stand. No way.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the last straw. Not when I'm eating my bacon over feces. No bacon over feces this morning. And he chucked it on out of there. And I guess like I can only imagine what he was thinking that entire time. Like he's like, yeah, I know they're poor, but that doesn't mean they can't wash. Like they have access to water.
Yeah.
Just because you're poor doesn't mean you put chamber pots underneath the kitchen table. I mean, what designated that? Like, why would the poor have to do that? I know that's what he was thinking the entire time. What's wrong with these people?
Yeah.
This has nothing to do with, like, I don't know, the capitalist exploiting classes. This is just poor people, and they're being disgusting. These are just disgusting people. That's what he was probably thinking.
Yeah, I'm sure that's what was on it. I think that was what's torturing him. The fact that he could not accept that either. He was supposed to be fighting for these people, too.
Yeah. And then he's like, yep. Basically, he got on out of there. He couldn't take it, and he left that house. That was the most disgusting house he could find, by the way. He sought that one out, apparently. And then he basically said, yep, we can do this, guys, but you guys got to lift yourselves up. You got to clean your shit up, basically, literally.
Really?
You got to clean your shit up because there's no way we're going to take the middle classes and make them come down to you. That's just not possible. The middle classes will never accept that filth. It's too disgusting. So the only way this is going to work is for you guys to come up to us. That's it. So you're changing to our standards. Goodbye.
Yeah. Which is kind of depressing because he's kind of like, can that happen? I'm not sure.
Well, the chamber pots cannot be put on the table. I think
that's true.
Put out an ordinance.
Yeah, no chamber pots under the table. I think it was interesting. They ran into some points. An interesting point I thought, Martha Nussbaum brought up in this book, which is the danger of disgust. Some of the danger of disgust is, she says, disgust. She is very suspicious. She's kind of pretty anti-disgust. Martha Nussbaum, pretty anti-disgust. Much more so than almost all of these writers, Rosen and Miller. But she says, disgust, because of its core idea of contamination, basically wants to get the person out of sight. Just get them away, right? And she even tells, I love this little story she tells. She says, my own experience of moralized disgust takes the following form. When politics proves too gross and vile, I imagine, and sometimes seriously entertain, the thought of moving to Finland, a nation in which I have spent 8 summers working at a United Nations Institute, a nation, therefore, I know pretty well, but not too well. I imagine it, not altogether falsely, as a land of clear, pale blue lakes and unsullied forest, and at the same time as a land of social democratic virtue, unsullied by greed, aggression, and corruption. In short, my fantasy is an escape fantasy, having more to do with back formation from current discontents than with constructive engagement with Finnish society. Anger at U.S. politicians tends in the direction of protest and constructive engagement. Disgust at U.S. politicians leads to escape and disengagement. And she says, like, she goes on to say, like, even, she goes to the next point, she says, even towards, she says, like, people who are racist and sexist, she says, we should distinguish carefully between persons and their acts, blame people for any bad or harmful acts they commit, but retain respect them as people capable of growth and change, so keep them around. Or she thinks the fear of disgust is this, like, you're just going to push them out of the discourse, and even for people she does hold in contempt, I'm sure, sexist and racist she still keep them around. Don't have disgust for them. At least that's her point of view. But I do think when disgust malfunctions, we should watch out for that. I know but Martha Nussbaum's a big guilt pusher rather than a shame and disgust pusher. So I don't know if I go with that either.
I get it, but I don't know. Let's just keep it real. Guilt doesn't stop as many people as disgust does.
Nah.
I mean, just let's just keep it totally real. If we got a bunch of tools in our drawer here. If we get disgust on our side in the right way, that's unstoppable.
Yeah.
Guilt, yeah, maybe it works a little sometimes if it's done right.
Though I liked what you said when we were talking about guilt with names escaping me. Without
Kaufman. Without guilt and justice.
Yes, Kaufman, Without Guilt and Justice. Thank you. They were both the names I wanted. And I like, you had the perfect analogy when you said, guilt doesn't stop things. Guilt's like the police. It shows up after.
This is after the event is already done. This is true, yeah. That's right. Disgust probably would make sure that doesn't happen in the first place.
Yeah.
And it's awfully powerful. Pretty powerful stuff.
Yeah,
I mean, very dangerous.
I guess, yeah, definitely. I mean, I would hope the disgust would be somewhat regulated rationally. I mean, we all can't be worrying about Zeus and messes or Kimoi Otaku. You know what I mean? Hopefully your disgust is aimed at things that are truly low or should be treated as low rather than you. Oh, I don't like you. You look freakish. So go away.
Yeah, I guess
it definitely needs to be reined in.
Yeah, it has to be tempered by reason.
Yeah.
It has to be tempered by reason and a culture that fosters correct. I'm going to sound like some kind of Victorian. Correct disgust.
Correct. Yeah.
Or at least rational disgust. There has to be a reason other than taste. No, objective.
Yeah.
What if I say that?
Yeah.
I mean, and also I kind of want to add that, a culture that fosters correct disgust, but a culture that would, in my eyes, a culture that would not allow the elimination of people that we, not outright eliminate the shaming, the hatred. That's fine. But it goes too far when they have to be erased from society, right? That can't be. That can't be the way we go. That's just one step towards a kind of a cultural fascism. So there has to be disgust, but reason has to not only limit disgust, it has to also limit how far it can go, and it has to limit even our correct disgust, right? Even justified, quote unquote justified disgust has to be limited. It can only go so far before it steps over something more valuable.
Yeah. Since we got into politics, maybe this is just, I don't know, something I felt. I went back to The Revolt of the Masses by Ortega. Just a section I really, really like. One of my favorite parts in Revolt of the Masses is when he talks about liberalism, and it kind of really fit in with me as I was thinking about disgust and what kind of people I'm disgusted at, my snobbish taste and such. But I really do think this is true. He says, Ortega says, the political doctrine which has represented the loftiest endeavor towards common life is liberal democracy. It carries to the extreme the determination to have consideration for one's neighbor and is the prototype of indirect action. Liberalism is the principle of political rights according to which the public authority, in spite of being all-powerful, limits and attempts, even at its own expense, to leave room in the state over which it rules for those for those to live who neither think nor feel as it does, that is to say, as do the stronger or the majority. Liberalism it is well to recall to this day, is the supreme form of generosity. It is the right which the majority concedes to the minority, and hence it is the noblest cry that has ever resounded on this planet. It announces the determination to share the existence with the enemy, more than that, with an enemy which is weak. It was incredible that the human species should have arrived at so noble an attitude, so paradoxical, so refined, so acrobatic, so anti-natural. I love this section. And it's very true. I think this is what needs to be kept in mind. This is kind of like where my disgust kind of rides, though. You know what I mean? Like people who don't follow that.
Yeah, who break the rules.
Yeah, right.
Or, yeah, I guess in a way, proto-fascists, or I don't know, whatever you want to call them, that would sweep away any and all erroneous aspects, I guess. So that's, I don't know, pretty much all I have to say for this. I thought it was a great book. I think it's probably one of the best books we've read.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm definitely gonna be going back. I mean, I think we're gonna be sticking around in the realm of Disgust. So we might, in our next video, not gonna say what it's about yet, just yet, but we might still be talking about Disgust next time, just in a little bit different context. So it will continue to come back again and again. Definitely recommend William Ian Miller.
Yeah, I'll have to think about. I think it maybe Disgust is more a part of your life than you realize. So definitely give it a read. Can't recommend it enough.
Yes. Even yes, our viewers probably realize I'm quieter. I'm normally one of the more quiet people. I've been even more quieter this video. Sadly, life got in the way. I was not able to make it entirely through the book, but from what I have read, and I will also recommend. And though my recommendation, of course, has to have the grain of salt that comes with the book not being finished, but probably the recommendations from Dustin and Justin should be enough to convince you to.
Yeah.
Right. Great.
It's really, really, really good. So that's all for this time, and I guess we may be continuing to discuss a little bit more in a different way next time. I guess until then, if you want to talk about Disgust in the comments, talk about your disgust for something, write what disgusts you. I don't know, or just tell us what you thought of the book. Until next time.
Yeah.
See you.
See you.